Several weeks ago, I was contacted via email by the Chinese government.
What are you talking about?
I'm not joking. At first, I thought the email was a prank or something, but it was a legitimate offer to start producing propaganda for China. It stems from a documentary I produced about Falun Gong, a Chinese cult you might know from their Shen ballet performances.
But their offer was simple: create propaganda for the glorious People's Republic of China.
How could I possibly pass up the chance to become part of the Chinese propaganda machine? So I went undercover. I created a fake propaganda video and did what I could to learn more about the operation. I wanted to find the face of modern-day propaganda, perpetuated by publications like the Epoch Times and Falun Gong, as well as governments like our own and China. And even though China paid me for the video, I try to make things right.
So I'm here at the FBI headquarters to present them with a check for the money that China paid me to create propaganda. This is really the only patriotic thing left to do in America, is directly pay the FBI with Chinese money. China also doesn't know that I'm producing this video, exposing our agreement.
They're not going to be happy with you. You're going to end up with your head blown off.
So join me as I show you how I became paid propaganda for China.
Get ready to travel back in time to the magical world of ancient China. With a unique blend of classical dancers, beautiful costumes, and legends coming to life, Shen is a theatrical performance that will take your breath away.
Shen is how most people have heard of Falun Gong, the group I was hired to make propaganda about. Shen is a performing arts company that acts as a marketing arm for Falun Gong, a Chinese cult/religious group that claims to have over 70 million members. Falun Gong started out as Falun Dafa, or Qigong, or Tai Chi. It all started from the series of exercises that was then corrupted into something more. So almost 2 years ago, I made a documentary about how Falun Gong claims to be massively oppressed by the Chinese government, even being the victims of systematic hunting and organ harvesting. Those claims are backed up by some seemingly very credible sources, such as the UN and international tribunals. However, much of the information these entities are working with usually originates from Falun Gong themselves, making the entire thing just a huge mess. My first video was sort of focused on how hard it was to make sense out of this whole situation. If you haven't seen it, I'll have it linked in my description. The Shen performances, by all accounts, are actually really top-level ballet, but it's sort of hard pivots at the end of the performance to be a pitch to give money to their cult. They just create so much content across so many different avenues. I mean, let's talk about their award-winning documentary.
I was in Beijing when the crackdown occurred.
Created by a subgroup called Swoop Films, Swoop is set up to look like some sort of indie production company. Yet, as we can see from Instagram posts, they create content for Epoch Times, which again we know is just a mouthpiece for Falun Gong. Swoop Films pretty much only follows film festivals and other Falun Gong pages. All of their content is just China or organ harvesting focused, which again is Epoch Times and Falun Gong's main narrative they like to hit home. Here's a great example of how widespread the Falun Gong information network is. When I clicked on Swoop Films followers, the first person I saw on that list was Falun Dafa Info. I clicked on this post they had.
Transnational repression is when a government goes to another foreign country and suppresses its diaspora. Freedom House named the Chinese regime as one of the biggest perpetrators of this. They said the Chinese regime engages in the most sophisticated, global, and comprehensive campaign in the world.
Okay, wow, that's pretty scathing. Well, who's Freedom House? Why are they being quoted here? Well, Freedom House was started in the 1940s by Eleanor Roosevelt, so it, sounds really legit. But it's grown to become a propaganda network for the US government. As far back as 2006, Freedom House has been forced to admit that they obtain 80 to 90% of their funding directly from the US government and other world governments. Back in 2006, it was also revealed that the US government had Freedom House engaging in, quote, clandestine operations in Iran. In 2000, 2000, Mark Palmer, one of the founders and vice chairman of Freedom House, created Friends of the Falun Gong. When you look at Friends of the Falun Gong's annual tax filings, you'll see that they contribute to New Tang Dynasty, Epoch Times, Hope Radio, all of the Falun Gong media sources. So clearly Freedom House is easily bought and paid for, but with a very legitimate sounding history, making them the perfect mouthpiece for Falun Gong. Plus, Falun Gong and the US government have a mutual enemy in China, so their partnership makes perfect sense. Falun isn't trying to publish anything that doesn't also further American imperialism. It's a very symbiotic relationship. Even my future boss John Oliver got duped by Freedom House.
When Freedom House scored countries and territories for political rights and civil liberties, Tibet came in second worst behind Syria and ahead of both Somalia and North Korea.
And if you're wondering why I got such a low-res clip of John Oliver's show, it's because that 360p version was uploaded by Freedom House to their own YouTube as like a little victory lap. Like, yes, I agree. The political rights and civil liberties of people living in Tibet are probably not very good, but also this is literally CIA and cult propaganda. So you have to ask yourself, how reliable is it really? Also, John, just hire me. What are we doing here, dude? What are we doing here? I mean, I make these little videos. Just hire me. Freedom House published a 22-page report on their findings when looking into the persecution of Falun Gong. This report heavily cites another group, Human Rights Watch, which has a very similar connection to the US government and has come under lots of fire for essentially also being a propaganda arm. 2 Nobel Peace Prize laureates and a group of over 100 scholars have written an open letter criticizing what they describe as a revolving door with the US government that impacts HRW's work. For being a human rights group, Human Rights Watch doesn't really do much, it seems. So what's my point? Well, Swoop Films is sharing Falun Dafa info. Falun Dafa info is citing Freedom House. Freedom House is citing Human Rights Watch, who is also citing films produced by Swoop Films. It's a really wild closed loop of propaganda. And when most of those stops on that wheel all go directly back to Falun Gong through funding proof, then doesn't that make you stop and wonder, well, if all the stuff they are saying is true, then why all this bullshit? Now, the reason I've spent so much of the video talking about this sort of closed feedback loop and giving all the background to make it all make sense is because the average consumer would never dig deep enough to learn all of this information. You know, your average person isn't going to pore over financial records just to know if this group or this group is in bed with this group or this group. It's just not going to happen. I mean, you have to think about this as a smokescreen that they've been carefully creating and curating for over 30 plus years. And that's what China wants to emulate by hiring different influencers and stuff like that. By hiring people like me, China's just trying to make it harder for you to figure out what's true or not true about any given issue. There's tons of legitimate research papers talking about the connection with Falun Gong being funded by the CIA and even Canadian intelligence. So how elaborate are these networks of propaganda exactly? Well, as I said in my intro, even I've been contacted to create propaganda by the Chinese government, and I'm just an overweight comedian. And I already hear you saying, well, Kyle, you've been shilling for the Chinese government this whole video, trying to paint their enemies as these huge villains. But that's to say that I don't support China either. I can think both of these sides are fucked up and abhorrent without taking explicitly China's side on the matter. And really, the entire point of this video is to examine the propaganda from both sides. The propaganda that the Epoch Times creates, but also the propaganda that China is trying to emulate and create themselves by hiring people like me and these different influencers. A few days ago, I was contacted with a bizarre email. Hi, Kyle. I am Cassie, on behalf of an anonymous China government. Nice to meet you. Are you interested in creating some content for various China and world issues? We'd provide some current affairs and political news as themes to you, and you can make contents in videos or posts and upload it to your social media platforms. We are honoring the objective and truthful contents of what you're saying. We are looking forward to hearing from you soon and discussing more details with you. Have a great day. So, I'm not an idiot. Obviously, at first I didn't think this was real, but the more I spoke with her and we set up the details of our agreement, I realized that this was legit. I was surprised. Their guidelines were very lenient. For instance, they never told me not to disclose or to disclose anything. This is literally the contract I signed. As you can see, everything is very official. I signed my side to match, but I don't think I'm doing anything wrong in revealing all of this to my audience. I guess that's up to the Chinese government. Come on, guys, the video isn't even over yet. As part of this, I created a video purely to be used as Chinese propaganda. I had ChatGPT generate the text. Since ChatGPT can't be biased, I figured this would be a good use of our future overlords' benevolent powers. That's why if you stumbled across my last video and I sounded like a robot constantly repeating myself, that's because I was. I made sure that the AI just kind of talked in circles and wasted time. I just needed to get past the 8-minute mark, per our very legitimate legal agreement. They also paid me up front, something that's never happened with me for a YouTube collaboration. They asked for 0 analytics, also something very unusual for a sponsorship. Most brands want to know exactly how well your video might do, what age ranges it might impact the most, but they didn't care about numbers at all. Hey guys, Editing Kyle here. So I'm cutting the video right now, and China had actually sent me some notes. I thought that was interesting because the things that they're sending me as notes are the things that they definitely want highlighted or not highlighted in their propaganda. One of the main things that they wanted me to do was cut out any mention of China having to do anything with human rights violations. They also wanted me to not mention that the monetization disease wasn't created in a lab, in a Chinese lab. So it's sort of what you would expect, I suppose. They also wanted me to add like 10 seconds minimum of a guy setting himself on fire for $200. I really didn't think they would pay me up front like I was asking for, but the company that paid me, Wotacall, seems to be an influencer marketing company, as either contracted with the Chinese government or just straight up a part of them. For the brands they claim to work with, their website isn't very polished and their Twitter is suspended. That's a red flag for sure. No, not that red flag. I was curious about others that might have taken the same deal, so while Undercover, I asked to see the example of some other past collaborators. That led me down a rabbit hole of a few other channels I found, and while I found many channels that fit this mold, and I suspect, I don't want to speculate on other creators that way.
I get a lot of people asking me, Lonely Hearts clubs out there asking me, what are the possibilities of me marrying somebody from China? You've got to watch out for the gravediggers. And
so I'm only going to take a look at the example they provided me with, Barrett. His name is Lee, he's English born, living in China, and his videos are pretty clearly just fed talking points. His thumbnails are really something else. I mean, I guess this is what China wishes my channel would be like. I mean, they paid me $600 for a video. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's what my channel should be like. There was so much to think about. I needed to hit the hay for the night, you know? Too much going through my mind. But as I tried to get to sleep, I couldn't. Because I remembered. Dark Brandon. How could I betray one of my best friends, Joe Biden? Sure, I wasn't coming after America directly, but by taking the money from China, aren't I really just a tool of communism? And communism is bad because... So after that, I decided the only ethically patriotic thing to do was to try to give the money I got from communism back to capitalism. I first headed out to the LA Public Library, one of the finest institutions of communism you can find in modern day America. Pro tip, at the LA Library, you can make one free poster a week and they don't really care what you print at all. They'll let you do it for free. So I printed out this big novelty check at the library and I was ready to go. I headed down to the FBI headquarters here in LA, ready to present my check to the FBI Counterintelligence Department.
Oh wait, never mind, there's hella cars coming. Oh shit, FBI squirrel.
FBI squirrel?
FBI squirrel. What's more American than giving a big check to the government? You know, like that's what this country was founded on. Where the fuck is everyone? Guys! Actually, these are pretty good spies if we can't see a single one of them. I can't believe there's no security or anything. Like, what if I was the Mujahideen, what if I was ISIS? So my journey of producing propaganda has ultimately led me here. Standing here with a giant, fake oversized check, literally in the courtyard of the FBI building.
But I was less than successful. They told me to kick rocks, something my friends from China never did. So I went to my favorite Taiwanese restaurant and decided to engage in a little capitalism for old time's sake. Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it. If you could hit the subscribe button, that really helps me keep making videos like this in the future. Also, I have a Patreon, if you have any inclination to help me out over there. It's in the description, it's gonna be on the end screen here. But, you know, throw your boy a couple bucks. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching.
I cannot believe the FBI just doesn't care that we're doing this.